Hey everybody, I'm back. All right, so this one that we're going to talk about now is a lady named Athaliah. And Athaliah was not a nice person. She was the daughter of Queen Jezebel and King Ahab. And then she was the mother of King Ahaziah. And she is the only queen that ever ruled in Judah. And she ruled for 6 years. If you want to know where she is in the Bible, you will see her listed in 2 Kings, chapter 8, verse 26 and 27. She's in 2 Chronicles, in chapter 22 and chapter 24. And then, also in chapter 2. So, I don't know if you remember or not, but we talked about Queen Jezebel and how evil that woman was. And this was her daughter. And I don't know. I can only imagine that Jezebel taught her well on how to be evil. So the terrible things that her mother did, she did teach to her children. In 2 Chronicles chapter 22, verse 3, it says, "He also walked in the ways of the house of Ahab, for his mother advised him to do wickedly." And that is talking about Athaliah's son, Ahaziah. And so you have the grandson of Jezebel, who was an evil man, and he was the king. So Jezebel taught it to Athaliah, and then Athaliah taught it to her kids. And it tells us in chapter 24, verse 7, "For the sons of the wicked Athaliah had broken into the house of God and even used the holy things of the house of the Lord for the Baals." So according to scripture, she was very influential in both the son's life and then also in her husband's life. If you look at 2 Chronicles 2:21, it says that her husband walked in the way of the kings of Israel, just as the house of Ahab had done, for he had the daughter of Ahab as a wife, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord. So I can imagine that he got a lot of his ideas of murdering all of his brothers from his wife, or maybe from her mom. So he didn't want anybody to threaten his rule. And so he made sure that he didn't let anybody be competition. And when her son died, she learned from her husband, and she did the same thing. She killed as many of her grandkids as she could. So her husband's dead, her son is dead, and most women would be mourning because they've lost huge pieces of their life. But no, she's not. She's out trying to kill her grandchildren. This should show you just how wicked this woman really was. Because she didn't waste any time. She didn't ponder this at all. She found out that her husband and son had died, and immediately she tells the soldiers to go and kill all of his heirs. The only boy that managed to escape from this horrible woman, my jaws get tight sometimes, was a boy named Joash. And he was actually saved by Jehoshabeth, or Jehoshaphat. She's called both. And he was hidden in the house of God for 6 years. That 6 years that she reigned was while he was in the house of God, trying to grow up a little bit and be big enough that they could crown him king. So she's doing her thing, evil. And she finds out that they are crowning her grandson, who she thought was dead. And she comes tearing into that temple crying treason. But she kind of chose the wrong place to do this. All of the people that were there to support that boy. They didn't want her to be queen anymore. She was evil. They were tired of being ruled by someone who was innately evil. And so when she did this, there was a priest named Jehoiada, and he was the one that was anointing him as the king. And when she come running in there, he turns to the guards that are in there, and he sees her, get her out of our temple and kill her. And so they did. They took her out of the temple, outside of the palace, and they killed her. And this, it's kind of funny. In my mind, all I can think of is like Wizard of Oz, because in 2 Kings 11 and 20, it says that all the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was quiet, for they had slain Athaliah with the sword in the king's house. Everybody was so happy that this woman was gone, but there was a peace that came with it. And what I want to say about that is something that I've been told and that I have experienced myself. When the power of God comes in and it washes in a flood, everything a lot of times will get very quiet. Even children, animals, everything feels that presence, feels that power. And sometimes you just, it's like it just makes you be peaceful, makes you be quiet. And so, as happy as they were, there was finally peace in their kingdom. So what's a good takeaway from this horrible woman in her life? Athaliah did whatever it took to reach her goal, to be queen. And she lived, a woman who lived in a man's world at that time, she was so determined to get what she wanted that she was okay with murdering and conniving against her own family. So, as a woman, what do we draw from that? What I draw from that is be very careful that you don't become so goal-oriented that you lose yourself and you lose focus on what is important along the way. I'm guilty. Sometimes I am so just wearing blinders, see what I want, and I'm working so hard towards that I lose the peripheral stuff. And sometimes the stuff that's on the peripheral is actually what I should be focusing on. The only thing that you can ever focus on that is so good to be focused on that one thing is God. Nothing else in this world is worth that. Nothing else in this world is worth losing that focus, the focus of what you're supposed to be doing for the kingdom, and loving those around you. And that includes your family, that includes your friends, but it also goes further than that. You should love your neighbor. So, you got to make sure that you're not trying to succeed no matter what the cost is. Because I can't think of anything that's worth the loss of loved ones. It's not necessarily murder, but if you're damaging your relationships, you are sabotaging yourself. And if you're really just worried about your legacy, what you're going to leave behind, what are people going to say about me? What do you want them to remember? I can assure you that your job will replace you quickly. I can assure you that if you don't give love to the people that need it, they will find it somewhere else. And I can assure you that the things that we achieve in this life and in this world don't really matter, because you cannot take it with you. The only thing that you can take with you is hopefully knowing that you helped others come into the kingdom. God doesn't care what your title is while you're here. It doesn't matter if you're a CEO. It doesn't matter if you're a janitor. It doesn't matter if you're the pastor, or you're the song leader, or you're the one that collects the offering, or you're just somebody that goes to the church. That is not what is important. Your purpose is that you live for God, and that you try and make sure you are promoting His kingdom. Your followers on social media aren't going to make a difference in God's eyes unless it has something to do with His kingdom. Our primary purpose is just to live for God and to touch as many lives with His gospel as possible. And this can be done best by starting in your own home and teaching your children in a way that your legacy will be one of godliness, not like Athaliah, whose lineage, when you trace it back, was just very evil. You know, as a wife and a mother myself, I want to leave a legacy of godliness, of holiness behind. I want my family to remember me as being a good Christian woman. You know, I can remember being young and looking at the elders in my church and thinking, gosh, they're old. You know, they're out of touch. They don't know what it's like. They may not know exactly what it's like, but Solomon said something very wise. There is nothing new under the sun. What you are experiencing, it may be a little bit different, but in most senses, it's the exact same thing. Evil is evil regardless. Good is good regardless. And you need to make sure that you are not getting confused as to which one is which. And right now in this particular culture, man, that's twisted. I'm going to mention this just briefly because it doesn't have anything to do with my lady here. But, you know, on the news, they've really been talking about this revival that's in Asbury. It's a college that's in Kentucky. And they are just floored by the amount of people that have come and the way that it has just progressed, and like it's grown and it's become something like we haven't seen in a long time. It's kind of interesting that this revival up there began right after the Grammys, when we saw some really nasty evil. I've seen so many pictures and things. People that are not at all religious are looking at this and going, man, if that's not proof of end of days, I don't know what is. You know, and they don't call themselves a Christian. They don't call themselves anything religious. But they are seeing these signs that are showing up one right after the other, and they're going, I heard about this, you know, growing up as a kid, you know, when my grandma made me go to church or when she talked at home, I heard these things. Wake up, people. Please. I don't know how long we have. I really don't. I'm not even going to guess. But I am going to tell you that all of these signs, when Jesus was here, you know, he gave very specific things that were going to happen. If you look at Matthew 24, you will see that he was pretty specific about what was coming. And we're seeing all these things. The Bible attributes a lot of this stuff as like labor pains with a woman. You know, they start off a little bit here and there. And if you look at history, that's how this has been. This is not the first revival that has been experienced to this level. There was one in the 1900s. There was another one in like 1920s. Seems like they said there was one in the 1950s, another one in the 70s. I know that there was one in the 80s because I was live and remember that one, 88 Reasons Why He Can Come in 88. I remember that. But this first one I've seen in a long time. And when's the last time that you heard about the media portraying anything that is Christian or conservative as a good thing? This is on the news, and they're saying this is good, which is blowing my mind. But we don't want to be like Athaliah. We want to make sure that we are not doing evil things. You know, this woman, she's crazy. She's killing her grandkids. The only way that this one got out is because Jehoshaphat saw what was happening. So I'm going to end this one. And the next one will actually be us talking about Jehoshaphat. So if you got any questions or comments, leave them here and I will get back with you. I love you all and I'm praying for you. Please pray for me. God bless.